Thanks, Joe and Matt. That was amazing. It's really great to share this time with you. This is like a really special moment for me. Before I get started, I want to say that my presentation today is really guided by an article that I wrote by the same name. And Josh gave me substantial direction on that article, so I need to thank Josh. Thank you, Josh. Megan in my presentation talked about, and Doug this morning talked about the importance of science. If you want references to all that I'm going to be talking about today, just search this title up, and up will come a way too long article with way too many hyperlinks and references that will take you where you need to go. I'm a child and adolescent psychologist, and every day I work with kids whose lives are being torn apart by their overuse of entertainment technologies. For girls, it's a basic formula. They overuse social media and smartphones. They have 100 social media friends, but those phones become so compulsively used that it disconnects them from their families that even when they're older, they still need to connect with. So they get lonely, they get depressed, they cut, and they get suicidal. For boys, a little bit of a different formula. What they do is they become so enamored of video games that these really capable kids disconnect from all things productive. They lose an interest in school, and they quickly sort of move towards the cohort of young men, which we hear about, but there's actual research that says this young generation of men, they aren't going off to get jobs. They are living on, truly, many of them, on their parents' couches and gaming their lives away. And what's consistent about these cases is when parents come and they bring their kids in, they have a sense of guilt. They feel like they must have done something terribly wrong to cause their kids these big problems. What these parents don't know is that many of their kids' problems are really driven by this an unknown merger to them. This merger between the tech industry, the infinite wealth of the tech industry, and the highest levels of academic psychology to create what's called persuasive design or persuasive technology, and essentially create devices that are so powerful and have such a drug-like effect that they will pull kids away from the rest of their life. It affects us, but kids are much more easily affected and manipulated. So what I'm here today is to really talk about, because of persuasive design, this is not a fair fight. It's not a fair fight. We're all here talking about screens, working to pull kids away from video games and social media and online videos. It's not a fair fight. These devices really have a magnetic power. I think we also know that those screens pull kids away from all the important developmental activities that they need to engage in. So it's not a fair fight with respect to what is childhood itself. I want to start our story with the story of Dr. B.J. Fogg, who's a psychologist. Psychologists have ethics, a number of ethics, and his Stanford Persuasion Tech Lab. And they tell you pretty much like it is. Machines designed to change humans. And it kind of sounds otherworldly or dystopian, but if you get into it, and it sounds like some future, like this might happen in the future. No, this is happening right now, and it's happening right now to our kids. This is Dr. B.J. Fogg. I have never met a parent in all my many years who's ever heard of Dr. B.J. Fogg and his Stanford Persuasion Tech Lab, or have met with one or two parents that are in the software industry that have heard of persuasion technologies. I don't work specifically in Silicon Valley. Parents don't know this. Silicon Valley does. In Silicon Valley, Dr. Fogg is a godlike figure. Fortune magazine calls him a new guru you should know. He is known as a millionaire maker because his students co-founded Instagram. And all these other technologies, when we're kind of going, well, why did I lose my kid to this? Or when the parents that we're working with, or as Matt and Joe talk about, why are kids getting pulled away from this? So much of the technologies that we're going to talk about are driven by persuasive design and have at their heart A lot of Dr. Fogg's work, who is known as the father of persuasive technology. So what is persuasive design? I think, maybe some of you traveled in through airports, or obviously we all go to restaurants. What is, why is everyone staring at their device, adults and kids included? Why is that? Sometimes I think, it's like a mystery. Like, what is happening here? There are actual reasons behind all this. As Dr. Fogg tells us, we can now create machines that can change what people think and what people do, and the machines can do that autonomously. And when we're talking about behavior change, what that really means is social media sites, video game sites, looking to change your thoughts, your behaviors, to pull you onto their for-profit sites. That's really where the change is. I think we're going to see in a moment that there is, understandably, and I just want to say, as Matt and Joe said, I think, I don't think the people who are into persuasive design did this intentionally, or no one set out to say, like, what we're going to design is going to be hurtful to kids. But I think we're going to see in just a little bit that perhaps that would be predictable, or an understandable consequence of all this. And anyway, I think we're going to see there's understandably concerns about persuasive design and what it's doing to our kids, and I think it's reflected in changes to Dr. Fogg's website. I think he's kind of feeling the heat a little bit. This is the old wording. Instagram has influenced the behavior of over 800 million people. The co-founder was a student of mine, really touting this and bragging about, I've done this. That's all gone now. This was done as late as January 2018. This was on his site. It's kind of been my kids watch makeover shows. His site has kind of had one of those fancy makeovers. At the end, the new wording is, I teach good people how behavior works so they can create products and services that benefit everyday people around the world. And I'm not sure who good people are, but I hope you guys are. And I truly wish it was like that. And I kind of believe that Dr. Fogg believes. I think he does some work. He says, this is going to create world peace soon, or help create world peace. But we're just, and I wish it was like this, but it's really ignoring the reality of what is happening to a generation of, I would say adults, but primarily to kids, because again, kids are more affected by persuasive design. So how does persuasive design work? Persuasive design works by building social media sites and online video game sites that are better than the real world. They feel, especially to kids, like they are answering basic human drives and basic human needs in a way that is better than real life. Basic human drives, like to be social, which has helped humans survive and thrive, to obtain goals. And what these sites do is they convince you that by being on the site, you are getting those goals done in a way that's better than doing the hard work of real life, because real life is tough. Can't get around that. This is what Dr. Fogg says about video games. Video games, better than anything else in our culture, deliver rewards to people, especially teenage boys. Teenage boys are wired to seek competency. Video games and dishing out rewards can convey to people that their competency is growing. A real understanding that video games, better than anything else, teach teenage boys that they're wired to seek competency. 500 years ago, 100 years ago, if you were a teenage boy, you kind of understood, I've got to learn how to hunt and build a house and do all sorts of things to become successful and actually survive. Maybe 10 years ago, you kind of understood, well, I need to go to school actually and open up a math textbook, and I know that's hard, but I can do that, so I can potentially move on to college. But today, so much of what is found to feel right, to feel better than real life, are video games for boys who, points and leveling up and being a master of your domain and being like, you're number one so-and-so in your social cohort of gamers. That feels better than real life. We're also told by Dr. Fogg how persuasive design, and one of the reasons why I take issue with his work is he says I mentioned ethics in my work, but it's really buried in the back of these academic journals and sort of talked about it in abstract ways, and it doesn't focus, it doesn't address what is happening to this generation of children. Meanwhile, he is a godlike figure and very much understood by the Silicon Valley, who takes his ideas and uses them. And he talks clearly about what to do. He tells social media companies how to use his tools to pull people onto their sites and make, because that's how these sites make money. You know, the more time you're on there, the more money they're going to make. So these are pictures from Dr. Fogg's own website, and he says I took these pictures, and he says what we're going to do is one of his key elements to change behavior is being motivated or motivators. And so he says belonging is a core motivator. And he clearly understands this. That, you know, we're going to use, he says, the power of social acceptance on the right is a remarkably powerful motivator to pull users onto your social media site. But he says, you know what's even more powerful? The power of social rejection. That works even better. Or the fear of social rejection. As he says, today with social technologies a reality, the methods for motivating people through social acceptance or social rejection have blossomed. And I'm no English major, but blossom sounds like it has a positive connotation to me. Where is the discussion of what is happening to our kids? You know, imagine you as a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grader, the feelings that you had, the concerns as soon as you walked into school about being worried about being socially accepted. Or that painful feeling of looking around at lunch and feeling like you might be socially rejected. So, you know, where is the talk of if it's okay to take basic traits of teens and preteens that are built into their DNA, they can't escape that, we all have that, it's built into us, to exploit those for profit. When you talk to people who are involved in persuasive design, they oftentimes will say, like, you know, the official industry line is what we do is persuasive design, and it can be called UX, user experience research. Some of those folks are doing good, you know, just like making the site better, work better for all of us, but it's also exploited. And, you know, you're going to hear from industry that these techniques are used to make the products just better and more user-friendly. What's ignored is kind of there's actually, like, people understand it, it's called dark design. They understand that there are harmful purposes or kind of untoward purposes going on behind it. For example, I think in Matt and Joe, I think we saw Dr. John Hobson, his quote a little bit. All these people are really smart. He has a PhD in behavioral and brain science from Duke University. He wrote the paper Behavioral Game Design. And it's posted online and I'm not sure if it's posted online. I don't know if he put these Skinner rat box cages on this page, but that's what those are. And as he says, this is not to say that players are the same as rats, but there are general rules of learning which apply equally to both. He goes on to say, how do we make players maintain a high, consistent rate of activity? To me, that sounds much like an experiment of running lab animals through their paces. He also says, how do we make players play forever? After he wrote this paper, Dr. Hobson was hired by Microsoft to be a leader in game development, as in Xbox Live. And he went on to develop video games like in the Halo series. Do you know how many kids in my clinical practice that I have lost to the Xbox and lost to games like Halo? Well over 100. I mean, I'm talking really capable boys, many off to really good, you know, places. And I work with kids over the course of their lifespan, And I just watch them, and they end up, again, on their parents' couch. They're not going to school, they're not getting a job. And parents just don't know that hidden behind their kids' screens, they don't understand the infinite resources of the tech industry, plus the highest levels of academic psychology working together to get kids to play video games forever. I think he left his PhD program to go work for industry, but it's Bill Fulton. He talks about what is persuasive design. He started Microsoft's Games User Research Group before starting as an Xbox Live, before developing his own consulting practice. What did he say is the intent of persuasive designers or the gaming industry, and I think this applies to a lot of most of the entertainment digital products that our kids are using. He says if game designers are going to pull a person away from every other voluntary social activity or hobby or pastime, they're going to have to engage that person at a very deep level in every possible way they can. And it's really compelling to see that highlighted portion that I highlighted. It's really, and this is why persuasive design is so dangerous to childhood. It is the world's biggest companies working to pull kids away from childhood experiences to put them on their for-profit sites. And I don't think I think UX researchers go into this, I don't think they quite understand the overall global impact of thousands of them working to do, pulling kids individually onto their product, but they're not understanding the global effect of it. So what really is the purpose? What persuasive design has done is it's moved childhood from not-for-profit spaces like running around outside to places where kids can be profited from. You don't make money when a kid is running around outside, maybe on the back end, some shoe manufacturer has to buy, we get new shoes because the kid wore them out. I imagine they might be losing some money now. Instead, we're pulling kids onto these for-profit sites, and that's really what persuasive design is all about. So what does this mean for childhood? It's meant a remarkable sea change in what is childhood, and we're all talking about this weekend. I won't talk about this too long, but younger kids, 5.5 hours, that's the red portion of entertainment tech every day. Video games, social media, online videos. When kids hit their teen years, they're going to continue to spend that red portion, but they're going to add to that another 2.5 hours of talking and texting on the phone. That's the yellow portion. So for teens, that's 8 hours every day. I'm a psych major. I've been working on this math all week, 5.5. I think I got it right. And then the little black sliver, if you might need my glasses, that represents the 16 minutes a day that kids spend using the computer at home for school. So persuasive design isn't really employed so much in those products, so that's why kids don't use those so much. For younger kids, that means they spend far more time playing with devices than they do in school. And for older kids, of course that's true. They spend far more time playing with screens and phones than they do sleeping. So what that means is persuasive design has really helped change childhood. It has made screens, phones, and so forth the dominant activity, or it dominates childhood. For many kids I think we work with, it is childhood. And the problem with that is it pulls kids away from the activities that they really need to be engaging in. Family, even for teens, is remarkably important. School, I think really if you look at factor analyses, like kids' engagement with family and school is remarkably important. In addition to there's obviously playing around outside, exercise, early literacy, lots of other important elements of childhood. Not only that are we pulling kids away from this, but we're pulling them away from this, right, to put them on sites, and the more kids spend time on the internet, the more likely they are to be cyberbullied. So we're pulling them away from something good and putting them onto something which poses risk to them, because if you're cyberbullied, you're more likely to be suicidal, and you're more likely to skip school. Also puts you in places like where you're going to experience fear of missing out. And that really looks to be connected to our kids' depression. For girls, it oftentimes puts them in places where they're comparing their body image and might be connected with eating disorders. There's a lot, again, pulling kids away from old school positive activities to put them in some other place. What's the result? I'm sure most of you know this article. Dr. Jean Twenge, Have Smartphones Destroyed a Generation in the Atlantic? Her research is really powerful. Looking around, trying to find why this generation of kids, especially girls, teen girls, are depressed, cutting, suicidal. If you're a clinician like me, I don't know if the right word is tired. I want to help these kids. I get tired of the fact that I'm seeing this every day, and I think I know why it's happening. And I feel sometimes powerless to do anything about it, and that's why I try to stay up late and do crazy things and talk about it. It's formulaic. But she really looks around. She says, like, I'm looking at the economy. I can't see that's a factor. What I can see is it really looks to be, especially for girls, living their lives on smartphones and other devices and social media, drives kids, depression, and suicide-related behaviors, cutting, lots of suicide. And I think it's a big factor. The average age when kids get a smartphone now has dropped all the way to 10. So I think that's driving. I'm really tired of seeing 4th and 5th grade girls come to me and they've already started cutting and they're already depressed. It's happening a lot. Cutting for kids and suicide attempts and gestures that put them in the hospital in the emergency room are up, for girls 10 to 14, are up 19% per year since 2009. For boys, video games don't do kind things to kids' school performance. With boys gaming a lot more than girls, if you're the parent of a boy, think about this. A full 57% of college admissions are now young women, and only 43% are boys. Our boys aren't going off to college a lot. If a lot of women are going to college and say, there's nobody for me to date here. And this is research from the National Bureau of Economic Research saying that a lot of young men, when they hit young adulthood, are not going off to get jobs. Imagine Hillary Cash could tell us a lot about that. They are, persuasive design is powerful. It feels that you are achieving, that you're leveling up. Boy, I'm with this cohort of guys. Meanwhile, you're not doing the hard work of getting a job. I believe persuasive design is about pulling you away from real-world experiences, to pull you and to have you engage in something away from real life. And if you do that enough, that's one of the definitions of addiction, if it pulls you away from important parts of real life. And I believe it's driving internet gaming addiction, which is understood in China and accepted in China, South Korea, and Japan, is under consideration in the US. We're just remarkably slow to do that. Psychiatry is way behind here. Video game disorder is coming out as a diagnosis for the World Health Organization. And I've seen more than 100 boys who put their fist through a wall when parents have tried to limit their gaming. A mom in Chicago, when I was back talking, said because these big teen sons get big, and this mom says, I tried to limit my son's gaming, and he put me in a chokehold. What's wrong with a chokehold? If it's not done right, it can kill you. I don't know what right is exactly for a chokehold. And for girls, if you are working in a psychiatric hospital and you talk with the people about what brought them there, if you really get behind it, large percentage of those girls are there because parents try to set a limit on that phone. I think video game addiction is a real thing. There's not been many people standing up. I think a lot for our kids. A surprising group has. Leading tech execs have come out recently to say, this isn't right. We understand that persuasive design is being used. This very powerful tool is being used. And what's interesting is, and this is Tristan Harris formerly at Google. What do they have to say? He says, the job of these companies is to hook people, and they do that by hijacking our psychological vulnerabilities. So they're tech execs, but they understand it's about psychology. And Dr. Fogg will tell you, yeah, this is all about computers, but the main issue here is psychology. A lot of other leading tech execs stepping up. Sean Parker on the left, former president of Facebook. Chamath Palihapitiya, former VP of Facebook on the right. Tony Fadell, the father of the iPad on top, largely the iPhone. And Mark Benioff, CEO of Salesforce, saying things like, we are concerned about what this is doing to our children's brains. We're concerned about addiction. And Mark Benioff says, comparing social media to cigarette companies and saying this should be regulated for kids because of the harm that it's being done to them. How has the consumer tech industry responded to these concerns? I don't think well. I think we probably talked about it here. The CCFC is concerned about, here's Josh, is concerned about Facebook Messenger Kids, a social network aimed at kids as young as 5. I need to thank Melissa for this slide, and showing us that persuasive design is really looking to be turned on very young kids. We hear Facebook's art director who says, we want to help foster communication on Facebook and make that the most exciting thing you want to be doing. No, no, and no. For younger kids, they need to be looking forward to hanging out with mom and dad, to be playing outside, to be engaging in creative play, which will build self-control, doing all sorts of things, learning early literacy, not getting sucked into the social media phone vortex, which we know is taking down this generation of kids. I think Josh said the CCFC has written to Facebook and asked them to pull the plug on this app, and they had all these child advocates sign this letter, and I think that's amazing, and I think we should say that's how has Facebook responded? They have gone on to, they've ignored that letter, and they've gone on to market this product to young kids. So I think this is where we can say, like, boo and hiss. All right, this is officially an interactive presentation. All right, I'm wrapping up soon. Well, while these leading tech execs are calling out psychology, where is the American Psychological Association, which is tasked with protecting children and families from harmful uses of psychology? Where are they? They've essentially been silent on this matter, in spite of an ethics code which says things like do no harm. In spite of a lot of ethics which says you need to be mindful about consent. All these kids are getting manipulated, and their kids can they even provide consent? But their parents don't know it. I've never met a parent who knows about persuasive design. Where is the talk? I know there's talk in the industry. Oh, we mentioned ethics. Who's reaching out? Yes, they're reaching out to Silicon Valley companies saying this is what you do, but where's reaching out to parents? More ethics. We're supposed to correct the misuse of psychologists' work, and we're supposed to protect kids because they're vulnerable to all this. They can't stand up to this. How can the APA go forward? What I'm going to be trying to do is work with a number of psychologists. If you're interested in doing this, we're going to write to the APA and ask them to make changes. And I'm thinking that will be, because we want to move forward from this conference and say, what can we do? Because the APA really needs to stand up. And what can it do? I think JFK really has it right. Technology has no conscience of its own. Whether it will become a force for good or ill depends upon us. We really need to step up and provide guidance to these machines that are doing this autonomously. You create, through persuasive design, you design the machine to measure kids all the time, and they are tweaking and doing all this stuff and measuring. Really? We can do that? No, I don't think we should. So, what can we do to make all of this better? Because I think that's the APA, but how can this inform our work right today? And from that, I think we can learn from my struggles with yoga. You can probably tell from my jittery manner and my lack of balance and mindfulness that I don't go to yoga classes a lot. But when I have, and I'm in the back, and I'm hearing nonsensical commands to me like downward dog and sunrise something, salutation or something, and I'm completely confused, what do? I look to the person next to me and say, wow, they're an expert. I'm going to kind of see what they do. And I suggest that we look to kind of experts in how they are raising their own kids. I think we all know Steve Jobs got a call from Nick Bilton. How are your kids liking the new iPad? Jobs says, they haven't used it. We limit how much technology is used in our home. And instead they emphasize family dinners. Bill and Melinda Gates, arguably the most powerful, definitely the most richest parents in the world. They didn't get their kids smartphones until 14, and Melinda's on record saying even that was too soon. And I really think that should guide our thinking. Here are these tech execs understanding the power of persuasive design, what it can do, how it overwhelms kids, that they can't stand up to the power of, the combined power of the tech industry and the highest levels of academic psychology. So it really, to me, just means that I think we, as parents, if we're working in schools, if we're working with child advocates, we need to encourage, we need to help. Persuasive design can really guide our work here, because a lot of people don't, tech industry folks understand that, but a lot of the folks we're working with don't. They don't understand why kids are getting sucked away into all this. It will help them understand why it's important to not dump devices on kids when they're young, and that they need actually to have protection and guidance from us. And just to finish up, yes, this is about, I think we're all here understanding this is about limiting kids' screens and phones and devices, but I think we also understand that the overuse of that means it's pulling kids away from the childhoods that they really need to have, all these important developmental activities. So yes, this is you know, when I was talking about that fight that's perhaps too big for kids, we need to understand that this is a fight not just over screens and phones and tech, but it's really a fight for childhood itself. So thank you.